Have you ever tried taking a photograph of your planted aquarium to share it with a friend or family member, and once you get done taking the photo, you're just confused as to why things don't look so great? Well, today we have the perfect episode for you because today we're going to talk about a bunch of tips for taking better photographs of your planted aquarium. My name is Logan with Team Buce Plant, and before we dive into the topic, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for lots more content like this. Now, without further ado, let's dive into our tips for taking better photographs of your planted aquarium. Tip number 1, set the lighting. As with most visual arts, lighting is so important. Many would argue that lighting is everything, especially in photography, so you don't want to neglect really dialing in the lighting when you're photographing your planted aquarium. The first step of this would be to remove all ambient light. Dim the lights, shut the shades, close the blinds, shut the lights off of any other tanks that are in the space so that only the aquarium that is the subject of the photograph is illuminated. This is really going to highlight the subject and make sure it stands out and looks beautiful in the frame. Additionally, you may want to adjust the actual aquarium light itself. If you have a light where the intensity is dimmable, you're going to want to find that balance where things aren't overexposed and they're not underexposed. So this allows you to really find that perfect balance of shadows, midtones, and highlights to really illuminate your tank in a visually pleasing way. Tip number 2, compose your shot artistically. The art of composition is what draws the human eye to specific parts of a photograph, and photographing a planted aquarium is no exception to this rule. Just like when you're creating your aquascape, keeping composition, the rule of thirds, maybe even the golden ratio in mind, composing the photograph itself to share it to the world is so important. First and foremost, you're going to want to use a tripod to make this process easier. If things are handheld, it's very easy to have a crooked shot or one that has movement and motion blur in it, so get your phone or your camera down on a tripod and then make fine little adjustments. In terms of the height of your camera's lens, we recommend starting at eye level and making sure that there's some space around the tank to sort of frame things up nicely. When framing up your shot, remove any clutter or equipment that just looks out of place. Some aquascapers go as far as to remove all the equipment from their tank, like the heater or the lily pipes. If you're submitting your tank for a competition, this might be a necessary step so as to not draw away any attention from the scape itself. And finally, it's generally a good idea to shoot your tank head on at eye level, but don't be afraid to play around with different angles and experiment. Back up, get closer, go at a 60-degree angle, try shooting the tank from the top down. Depending on your aquascape, composing your shot differently might bring out some really interesting visual highlights. Make sure you get the bread and butter shots, but then don't be afraid to experiment and see how your tank looks best. Tip number 3. Dial in your camera settings. Whether you're using an iPhone, an Android phone, a DSLR, a mirrorless camera, it is so important to be able to manipulate the settings of that device, really know those settings, and dial them in for each and every shot. So we recommend first learning what ISO is, shutter speed, f-stop, doing a little bit of research into how these affect your shot, because if you're working with a mirrorless or a DSLR, it's really going to be important for these adjustments to essentially just become muscle memory. Once you understand what these settings mean, it's important to keep your ISO as low as possible. ISO is essentially input gain, so the higher the ISO, the more visual noise you're going to get in your shot. If the tank is underexposed, increase the intensity of your aquarium light or bring in some ambient light to help further illuminate the tank. A studio light can help with this if you have one available, but if not, there are plenty of budget options available on the internet. Adjusting the aperture via the f-stop is a setting that can completely change the vibe and look of your photograph. The lower that f-stop value, the more open the aperture is, and the less depth of field you're gonna get. So whatever's in focus is gonna look beautiful and sharp, but everything else is gonna be completely blurry. So for this exact reason, most aquascapers who are used to photographing their tank recommend an f-stop of around f5.6 or f8, depending on the tank. So the higher that value, the more things that will be in focus. And at f5.6, you'll be able to see the foreground, midground, and background of your tank, mostly in focus. One more tip is to turn up the shutter speed to freeze motions. So if you have fish that are really active and like to move around a lot, if you turn up your shutter speed to something like 150 to 250, you may be able to freeze some of that motion. Of course, the best way to get around this is to shoot your tank at a time when your fish are nice and calm and relaxed and you can really go slow, and shoot a bunch of photographs and pick the best one where your fish are just in that perfect position. But this takes a lot of time. If you're using a phone and you want to take really stellar pictures of your aquarium, it's recommended that you download a third-party app that are going to let you dial in settings like ISO, shutter speed, and f-stop. If you don't have an app like that and you don't want to get too deep into the technical abilities of shooting, just tap your phone to expose for the most important part of your tank so that it's not blown out or underexposed. This can make a world of a difference between just pointing and shooting and taking a little bit of time to expose whatever section is going to draw the eye the most. There's so much that goes into shooting beautiful photographs of a planted aquarium. So if you have any burning questions, be sure to let us know down below in the comments, and we'll do our best we can to help you take better and better photos of your aquariums so you can share it with the world. To go a little bit deeper into these topics right away, go ahead and check out our articles on the Buce blog, where we cover lots of tips and tricks for shooting with a phone, as well as a professional camera. Thank you so much for watching today's video. This has been Logan with Team Buce Plant. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for lots more cool content like this. Now get out there and create something beautiful.